Prat stream, also known as Wadi Kelt. Our goal today is to understand what Wadi Kelt water uses have been throughout history, that is from the Hasmonean period, followed by Herod the Great, until our time. All in all, a period of 2,200 years. What was the source of the water? And what was the design of the aqueducts to bring the water to its destination? To receive a complete picture, I recommend that you also watch the video covering Prat Spring and the video covering Maboa Spring. Regarding our location, we are 7 kilometers west of Jericho and 13 kilometers east of the outskirts of Jerusalem. We will descend from here to the Prat stream. You can see it just below, and then we'll turn west until we reach Kelt Spring. It's about a mile away. What were the main usage of the water? Now, the Hasmoneans built a complex of winter palaces a few kilometers away from here in Jericho, part of which was later built by Herod the Great. The beginning of the Hasmonean activity in the Jericho Valley was agriculture development. According to the sources, palm trees and apharsimon shrubs were grown here in the Jericho Valley. And please don't confuse between the ancient apharsimon and the persimmon fruit that we eat nowadays. No connection between the two. The fruit of the palm trees yielded mainly dry dates, which could be stored and used as food for a long time, and also for making wines. From the apharsimon fruits, perfumes and medicines were produced. Since the palm tree is the top consumer, the top water consumer, compared to other fruit trees, it can already be said that in terms of water consumption, we will later refer only to its water consumption and not to the apharsimon or other crops. Another primary water consumer are the many pools and the unusual large amount of mikvehs, which is a type of ritual bath. They were built as part of the winter palaces of the Hasmoneans and Herod the Great. We will talk about the special structure of the mikvehs there and the reason for the large number in a dedicated video about the winter palaces in Jericho. Dozens of pools and mikvehs, which requires natural flowing water, consume a significant amount of water. But still, the most significant water consumption was intended for agriculture crops in the Jericho Valley area. 2 minutes on growing dates. Apparently, growing dates in the land of Israel began to be significant during the Second Temple period, that is 2,500 years ago. Now, some interesting data. According to studies on the cultivation of dates in the Second Temple period up to the Talmudic period, dates in the Jordan Valley grew here 2,000 years ago over an area of about 5,000 dunams, equivalent to 1,250 acres. Today, by the way, in the Jordan Valley, palm trees are growing on an area of 15,000 dunams, that is 3 times as much. Now, suppose the growth density was the same as today. That is, in each dunam or quarter of an acre, we grow 12.5 trees. I have no information on how many of the trees grew in the Jericho Valley, but I would not be too wrong if I assume that 25,000 trees grew in this area compared to 50,000 that grow here today. And now we reach the interesting part. During each year, each dunam of palm trees consumes 2,000 cubic meters of water, meaning that each tree receives 160,000 liters of water per tree per year And just for comparison, at the same time, 2,000 years ago, the annual water consumption of an average person was, have a guess? Well, 7,000 liters of water per year compared to 160,000 liters per palm trees. Wow, that is a huge difference. Shortly, we will see why this information is very important. To conclude the chapter of dates, I will only mention that in the Jericho Valley, dates were grown for drying. That is, dates that can be preserved for a long time. The quality of the dry dates of the land of Israel were unprecedented in relation to what was customary at that time. There is much evidence of this. Israel, during the Second Temple period, received most of its fame throughout the Roman Emperor due to the production of apharsimon, the apharsimon oil, due to the cultivation of dried dates that were used for food throughout the year, and also due to the asphalt in the Dead Sea and in the Khemar Brook. So we listed the main water consumers, which are palm trees, mikvehs, pools, and then apharsimon shrubs, farming for other crops and other needs. If we are interested in getting an estimate of the amount of water consumed here at the end of the second temple period, I simply calculated the water consumption of palm trees and multiplied by 2 to satisfy the rest of the water consumers. Now, the water consumption of palm trees is 25,000 trees times 160,000 liters, doubled for other needs, a total of 8 million cubic meters of water per year. Since ancient time, the main water source in Jericho is Elijah, or in Hebrew, Elisha Spring, and in its Arabic name, Ein Sultan. Ancient Jericho developed around this spring. There are other water sources in Jericho, and if I combine them all, then according to various studies, the amount of water that was available is about 5 to 6 million cubic meters per year. These resources were all exploited in the Hasmonean period and onwards. But in addition, the water that came from the spring in Wadi Kelt and the Naaran area were necessary to support the growing needs of the Jericho Valley. We are in Kelt Spring, the most eastern and lowest in altitude spring in the Prat Stream. And to the west, we have Maboa Spring, also known as Ein Puar, and Prat Spring, also known as Ein Farah. Their water is flowing via the Prat Stream. Maboa Spring is the most significant water supplier of the three springs, and I highly recommend watching the video on Maboa Spring, where I explain, among other things, why it is unstable water source. On an annual basis, it generates between 2 and 3.5 million cubic meters per year, a significant amount. But due to its instability, another aqueduct was built during Herod's time, so that during the low tide of Maboa Spring, water from Prat Spring, located 6 kilometers west of Ein Maboa, would compensate. In general, it can be said that there are 4 main layers of aqueducts. The first, Hasmonean, on top of which Herod built an aqueduct using many parts of the Hasmonean one. Then the Pipes aqueduct built by the Umayyad dynasty. And the fourth, from the early 20th century, the one that actually you see below us here. Now, the aqueducts from or around Kelt Spring, this is where we are right now. So there is a continuation of the open aqueduct from Herod's reign that originates at Maboa Spring and supplying water to Cyprus fort. This one is on the south bank. We'll see it later. Another aqueduct on the south bank is the Tube Aqueduct, and its destination was a water reservoir, most of which is underground, Bet Jabbar El Fukani. The reservoir is currently blocked. It is located near the observation of St. George Monastery. The last one is the open aqueduct that actually you see in front of us here. Now we are on the north bank. Its water flowed to Jericho, mainly for agriculture purposes, and you can see the sign in Arabic which commemorates the construction of the flour mill and the aqueduct from here, from Kelt Spring to Jericho, and that was built between 1877 and 1912 by the Husseini family. Regarding the clay pipe aqueduct, this is a water aqueduct from the early Arab period, which for the most part consisted of a pair of adjacent clay pipes. Yet in some parts the aqueduct was open. The clay pipes are made of clay vertebrae glued together. The average diameter of the vertebrae is 45 centimeter and the length is 60 to 70 centimeter. On the steep cliffs, the pipes aqueduct using the aqueduct built by Herod without placing pipe because of the difficult terrain conditions that made it impossible to lay and connect the pipes. Out of the 3 bridges survived until now, carrying the Tube's aqueduct east of Kelt Spring, the largest bridge is the one in front of us. Its length is 130 meters and its height is 25 meters above the Wadi. And I will just mention that we are about 500 meters from Kelt Spring. The bridge was built on a number of arches, of which only 2 survived. It is important to note that this bridge is unique in that it was not built on the base of a bridge built by Herod that led the aqueduct indirectly around the hill in front of us. The aqueduct and the bridge are attributed by archaeologists to the day of the Umayyad Caliphate of the Muslim Empire that ruled the Syrian-Israeli territory in the 7th and 8th centuries. The Umayyad period was a period of great construction when in this area they built, among other things, the Hisham Palace in Jericho. And to conclude, as usual, a question. Some see the Prat stream in the section from Kelt Spring to the east as the Crete Brook, which in Hebrew is called Nahal Crete, mentioned in the Bible. Who is the prophet mentioned in the context of Crete Brook? The answer will appear in 5 seconds.